We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis in Meseches Gitin. This is Gittin Daf 43b. The Gemara is continuing with a statement of Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said on the previous summit, let's say Ruvain marries a half Shifcha, half Bas Chorin, and then she is freed. Ruvain does not die. Ruvain does not divorce her. Then Shimon marries her after she's freed. Then Ruvain and Shimon died. So Rav Chisda says she does do Yibum with their brother Levi. We don't call about her that she's the wife of two deceased brothers. In a situation where it's Shnei Mesim, there wouldn't be Yibum. In this case, it wouldn't be considered two Mesim. It's considered to be a regular case of Yibum. And the Gemara explains, Manavshach, because either way you look at it, de Ruvain Kiddushin, if the Kiddushin of Ruvain was effective when she was a half Shifcha, so then Kiddushin de Shimon, Lav Kiddushin, the Kiddushin of Shimon would not have been effective, and then she was only betrothed to Ruvain, and there would be Yibum. The Kiddushin de Shimon Kiddushin, and if the Kiddushin of Shimon was a Kiddushin, why would that be a Kiddushin? That would mean the Kiddushin de Ruvain Lav Kiddushin. That would mean that the Kiddushin of Ruvain was nothing, because at that time she was a half Shifcha, and then when she was freed, the Kiddushin of Shimon was a Kiddushin, and it's only a Yibum in terms of the marriage to Shimon. Rashi explains, it's not a problem of the wife of two deceased brothers. You might have thought she's half married to Ruvain and half married to Shimon. That's not the case. You might have thought she's coming from both of them. That would be a problem. Again, that's not the case. Either she's coming totally from Ruvain or she's coming totally from Shimon. We say in Yavamas, Gimel Achin Nesuin Gimel Nashim Nachrios. Let's say you have three brothers married to three women. One of them dies. And so now the second one, there's a process called Maimer, which is kind of like the betrothal stage of Yibum. So the second one begins that process of Yibum with a Maimer, Vames, and then he dies. So now she's going to the third brother. So the halacha there is Choletzes v'lo Mesiavemes. The halacha there is you do Chalitza and not Yibum. That actually is a problem of Shnei Mesim, because it's like she's coming from both of the brothers. Shenemar Umes Echad Mehem v'Gomer. It says one of them, Mishalah Zekas Yavam Echad v'lo Shalah Zekas Shnei Yavam. You don't do Yibum with a situation where the woman has the Zeka of two different brothers. So over here, where she only did Maimer with the second brother, she didn't really complete the Yibum, so she really hasn't left the first deceased brother. But the Maimer does something with the second brother, so she's kind of coming to the third brothers on account of both deceased brothers. But over here, the point of the Gemara is over here, it's not considered like she's coming from both Reuven and Shimon. She's not coming from both brothers. Because one of them is a full Kiddushin, and the other Kiddushin is nothing. And now, nevertheless, we do have a Machlokas Amoraim earlier, we do have a doubt which one is the Kiddushin. Now have a Kiddushin, which one is the actual Kiddushin? Now that they have both died, so she's going to do Yibam to Levi Mimanav Shach. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, we have the following, Machlokas Amoroim, Chetzia Shifcha v'Chetzia Bas Chorin, again a situation of a woman who's half Shifcha, half Bas Chorin, Sheniskacha l'Ruvain, she is betrothed to Ruvain, V'nishtachra, and then she's freed, V'chazra v'Niskacha l'Shimon, and then she has a Kiddushin with Shimon. Rav Yosef Bar Chama Omar Rav Nachman. Rav Yosef Bar Chama says that Rav Nachman says, Paku Kiddushay Rishon. In this situation, the first Kiddushin, it goes away completely. Meaning to say, in this case, let's say we're talking not about brothers. So in this situation, when she was originally betrothed to Ruvain and then she's freed, at that point in time, that Kiddushin is completely finished, and therefore she has a Kiddushin to Shimon. Rabbi Zeira Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Zeira says that Rav Nachman says, Gomru Kiddushay Rishon. On the contrary, at the moment she's freed, that Kiddushin actually completes itself, and she actually does have a Kiddushin to Ruvain at that point in time. Amar Rabbi Zeira says, Kivase Didi Mistaber. It makes sense to say, like me, that the Kiddushay Rishon actually finishes. Again, both Rav Yosef Bar Chama and Rav Zeira are quoting Rav Nachman, and Rav Zeira says that his opinion makes more sense. Because what does the pasuk say? It's written again by the Shifcha Charufa. So again, we say over there that that's not a case of adultery because it's not a true marriage. Since she's a Shifcha, she's not actually married to anyone, and therefore the adultery is not adultery that would carry the death penalty. And it's written in the pasuk, Lo Yumsuki Lo Chuvash. It says over there that they don't die because she wasn't actually freed. Since she wasn't actually freed, meaning she has a status of a shivcha, either somewhat or completely, whatever the case is, there is no death penalty. But the implication is, hachupasha yumasu, but if she would be freed, so then it sounds like the Kiddushin would complete itself, and there would be a death penalty. That's why Rabbi Zeira says, you see, like what I am saying, that the Kiddushay Rishon actually completes itself. Amar le Abai says to him, but what about according to the teachings of the Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel of the Yeshiva of Rabbi Shmuel. Diamar B'Shivcha Kananis HaMe'uresas LeEved Ivri. Again, as we quoted earlier, they understand what's the case of Shivcha Charufa. The case is she is a Shivcha Kananis who's betrothed to an Eved Ivri. So Hachanami Dechichu Pasha Yumasa, would you say over there that if she's freed, it completes itself? In other words, the whole discussion over here is only by a Chetzia Shivcha, Chetzia Baschorin. By a Chetzia Shivcha, Chetzia Baschorin, she's half Shivcha, half Baschorin. There was a question, does the Kedushin complete itself? And that's one of the opinions, as we said, by Shivcha Charufa, that it's talking about a Chetzia Shivcha and Chetzia Baschorin. But there's the other opinion of the Tanat of Rabbi Shmuel, that we're talking about a full Shivcha Kananis in that situation, and everybody agrees by a full Shivcha Kananis, if she's freed, the Kedushin is not going to complete itself, because in that case, the Kedushin is nothing. So would you say that? Would you say that in that case, if she's freed, they would die? Of course not. What do you have to say within the Tanat of Rabbi Shmuel? You have to say she's freed, and then she gets the Kedushin again. That's what it means. Meaning, according to the Tanat of Rabbi Shmuel, the pasuk means if she were to be freed and would get a new Kedushin, so then certainly there would be the death penalty. So Hachanami, so here also when you're talking about a half Shivcha, half Baschorin, even if you interpret the case of Shivcha Charuf in that fashion, Shechupasha v'chazra v'neskacha. The case is that you free her, and then she has another Kedushin. It does not necessarily mean that the act of freeing her automatically completes the Kedushin. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna bar Katina, Amar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Huna bar Katina says that Rav Yitzchak says, Ma'isa be'isha achas shechetzia shivcha v'chetzia baschorin. There was an incident with a woman who was half shivcha, half baschorin, v'chafu es rabba v'asa baschorin. And they forced the master to make her totally free because they wanted her to be able to get married and to have children. And the Gemara says, Keman, who does this follow? Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. It follows the view of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka to Amar, because he says, Al shneim hu omer, v'yevarech osam elokim v'yomer pru revu milu v'gomer. The pasuk is going on both Adam and Chava, man and woman. They both have the commandment of pru revu, to be fruitful and multiply, and so therefore the mitzvah is going on women also. So even by a half shivcha, half baschorin, we force the master to free her. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, no, that's not the case over here. In this incident, when they freed her, it wasn't because of the mitzvah pru revu, rather minog hefker nagu bar. Rather, it was because people were being too permissive when it came to this woman, since she was a half shivcha, half baschorin, she wasn't getting married. So therefore, the men, they were treating her in a way that was hefker, as if she was ownerless. It was inappropriate, and therefore, to prevent that's why they forced the master to free her. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamocher avdo la'ovdei kochavim o l'chutzlaretz. If somebody sells his eved to a non-Jew, to an idol worshiper, or he sells him to somebody who lives in chutzlaretz, yatsa ben chorin, that eved goes free. Rashi explains, Yatza l'cheirus im barach min oved kochavim, meaning, let's say he runs away from the idol worshiper. O shekansu bezin leftoso, or it even means that Bezin forces this Jew to redeem him from the idol worshiper. Kedamar lekamon, like we say later on, dekonsu moso lefdoso, we force him to redeem him. O cheshiyif den, when the point is when he does redeem him, lo yeshtabed, he's not allowed to use him as an eved anymore. O knas chachamimu, this is the fine of the chachamim. Hoel v'yifkiu min ha-mitzvahs, because he took this eved away from the opportunity to do mitzvahs, because he sold him to an idol worshiper. And Rashi continues, v'chein l'chutzlaretz, and the same is true if he sells him to someone who lives in chutzlaretz, yatza l'cheirus, he goes free, mipnei shotziu me'aretz l'chutzlaretz, because now he's taken this eved out of Eretz Yisrael and delivered him to chutzlaretz. Uv Gemara mefarish, and the Gemara will explain us mi kanso, who's the one that they fine. Emes halokeach o es hamocher, is the fine against the purchaser, or is the fine against the seller? And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hamocher avdo la'ovdei kochavim yatza l'cheres. If somebody sells his eved to an idol worshiper, that eved goes free. V'tzarech get shichra me'rabo rishon, and he requires a document to set him free from his first master. Amr Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, B'amed devar mamurim, when is this true? Shalo kasav olav ono, if he didn't write a shtar on him. Avl kasav olav ono, but if he wrote a shtar, zeu shechrura, that shtar acts as his shtar of freedom. My ono, what is ono exactly? What does that mean? What's written in the shtar? Amar Rav Sheshes says, the chasav le, if he wrote for him, hachi as follows, l'keshativrach mimenu, when you run away from the non-Jew, ein li'esek bach, I have no authority over you, meaning if he writes that into the document, that when you escape from the non-Jew, then you're not going to be my slave, that automatically is considered a shtar shechror. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Lova olav mina ovid kochavim. Let's say he borrows from a non-Jew, and he designates the eved's going to be like an apoteki to pay back the non-Jew in case the non-Jew needs to collect the debt. Kevan sha'asalo Ovid Kochavim nimuso. Since the Ovid Kochavim makes his nimuso, we're going to translate later on, so yatsa l'cheres, so he's going to go free. The point here is that by designating the Eved as an apoteki, by designating the Eved as payment for the loan, essentially that is already giving the Eved to the Ovid Kochavim. That's as if he sold him to the Ovid Kochavim, and that's why he goes free. And the Gemara says, "My nimuso." What is meant by the word nimuso? Amar Rav Huna bar Yehuda. Rav Huna bar Yehuda says nashke. It refers to nashki. Rashi says nashki chosam. That means a seal. V'simin avdas shetolin la'avodim mitzavareim. The non-Jews, they would put a siman of slavery on their slaves. They would hang it around their neck. It would be a seal. So the point is, once the Ovid Kochavim puts his seal over the Eved, that's as if he's been sold to the Ovid Kochavim, and therefore he's going to go free. It's equivalent to the case of the Mishnah, where a Jew sells an Eved to a non-Jew. And the Gemara continues, Mosiv Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes asks a question from the following Braisa: Ha'arisin v'chakiros v'arisei batayavos. These are all different kinds of Jewish sharecroppers. Rashi will explain. V'yovid kochavim shemoshkan sadeu liYisrael. And a non-Jew who designates his field as a collateral for a Jew. The point is, in all of these situations, the Jew has some stake in the property. Afal pi she'asa lo nimuso, even though he made nimuso. That's the point to bring this Braisa to understand what the word nimuso means. Petura min ha'maiser. Still, nevertheless, this land is exempt from maiser. The point over here is that even though in all of these situations the Jew has some stake in the land, still it's considered non-Jewish land, and it's pater from maiser. And the Gemara now asks, V'salka daitach nashki. Now, if you think that the word nimuso refers to nashki, refers to a seal that you put over an eved, sadebas nashki is a field, something that you put this kind of seal on, it has nothing to do with that. That only applies to an eved. It wouldn't apply to a field. Clearly, the word nimuso does not mean nashki. It must mean something else. Elam Rav Sheshes, rather Rav Sheshes says Zman, what it refers to is the date. Meaning to say, you designate, let's say, the slave, or let's say the field as collateral, and then the date arrives where the borrower is supposed to pay the lender back, and the borrower has not paid the lender back, and so now the lender has the right to collect that collateral from that point in time. And so therefore what it was saying, again, by the case of the Eved was, let's say you have a situation where the time has come, and the idol worshiper, the non-Jew, is ready to collect the Eved. That's Nimuso, the date has arrived. So it's considered to be a sale. It's considered like it's in the possession of the Ovid Kochavim. And by the case of the field, we say the exact opposite. Even though the date has come and it's time for the Jew to collect the collateral, it's Petura min ha'maiser. It's not considered like it's sold to the Jew. And that's what the Gemara asks, Kasha Zman Azman. If that is the case, we do have a difficulty, because in one case, when the date comes, it seems that is a sale. And in the other case, it seems when the date comes, that's not considered to be a sale. And to that, the Gemara says, Lo Kasha, it's not difficult. Had mata zimne, had lo mata zimne. It means to say that they wrote in the date, but in one case the date has arrived, and in one case the date has not arrived. If the date has arrived, that was the case by the Eved, then it's considered like it's sold to the Eved. That's why it's Yatza L'Cheres. In the case of the field, the date had not yet arrived, so it was not considered like it was sold to the Jew. But the Gemara says, Elagabe Eved demata zimne tzrich l'meimar. But if the date came by the Eved, do we even need to say such a case? Isn't that obvious that it's a sale? In that case, it actually has transferred over to the non-Jew. And so the Gemara says, Ela idivide de lo mata zimne. They rather say that in both cases the time has not arrived. For lokashan, it's not difficult. Halagufa v'halapir. In one case, we're talking about where the actual property, and one case we're talking about the fruits of the property. And Rashi explains, "Ha'arisin Yisrael shenasa oris lovet kochavim." That's when a Jew is a sharecropper. Bekarka ovet kochavim, for the land of the non-Jew. Bekasavar yesh kinyan lovet kochavim baritz lafkia miyan meiser. This brisa holds that if a non-Jew owns land, so it's pater from meiser, he does have a kinyan in Eretz Yisrael. Aris is lemechsa l'shlish v'leravia. Now, an aris means he's going to take half or a third or a quarter. He's going to take some percentage of the produce. That's what the sharecropper receives. Chakirus means shekibla min ovid kochavim bekach v'kach chitin l'shon. In other words, he accepts it from the ovid kochavim for a set amount of wheat per year. That set amount is going to be given to the ovid kochavim, and the rest goes to the sharecropper. V'arisei batayavos means kolomar arisas kavua v'omedes me'avos. That just means he inherited the arrangement of sharecropper. The father of this Jew, or the fathers of this Jew, they were always sharecroppers for generations to the forefathers of the non-Jew. Even though this arrangement has been going on for a long time, it's not considered acquired by the Jew. Who it's still considered owned by the non-Jew. And this Jew is going to be pater from Meiser. He's going to be exempt from Meiser in his portion. And Rashi continues, Afal Pisha also lo Yisrael nimuso, even though he made for the Jew nimuso, And again, the Gemara then understands that to mean Zaman, it means the date. The point is, if I don't pay you by such and such a date, so then it belongs to you. Kasha Zman Azman. Then the Gemara said we have a difficulty, a contradiction, because in one case the date considers to be like it's a sale once the date comes. In the other case, it seems like it's not a sale. By the Evet, it's considered a sale. By the field, it's not a sale. And so first the Gemara answered, by the Evet, the date arrived. That's why it was a sale. And then the Gemara said, but if you're saying that by the Evet, the date arrived, so that seems too obvious. And so then the Gemara answered, the difference is whether we're talking about the actual property or the fruits of the property. And Rashi explains, by the Evet, they had a date for the actual ownership of the Evet himself. If he doesn't pay him back, the body of the Evet will go to the non-Jew, and already from now he's enslaving him. And since he did not take seriously the takon of the Rabbanan that it's also to sell to an Ovid Kochavim, they fined him, even though the date did not arrive. Now, by the field, the situation was there was a date in terms of the fruits of the field. Right now, you don't get any of the fruits of the field. But if I don't pay you back by a certain date, then you'll get the fruits of the field until I pay you back your money. Therefore, even if the time arrived, that's not considered to be a sale, because even at that point in time, he doesn't get the actual property. He only gets the fruits of the property. And certainly when the time does not arrive, and so that's why by the field, when the Jew is collecting the fruits of the property, it's not considered that the Jew is an owner of the field, even when the time arrives. And again, by the Evet, it's the exact opposite. By the Evet, even before the non-Jew takes the actual body, so to speak, of the Evet, the non-Jew is allowed to work the Evet, and therefore, even before the time arrives, we say that the Evet goes free as a knas against the Jew, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Dalid Amud Aleph.